So we have received letters of intent from Jamel Taylor and Mike Anderson. Jamel Taylor is a really, really feisty winner. That's how I would describe him. Was the California 4A State Player of the Year, and his team also won a state championship. And he's just a real dedicated, passionate basketball player. Really good character kid. A 5'11" guard. Was a shooting guard for a long period and trying to make the transition to play the one. He can kind of play both, but he's a guy that can pressure the ball and works really hard. Mike Anderson, plays multiple positions on the perimeter. Good ball handler, good penetrator, really dedicated player that is a really good rebounder from the guard position. Has also been successful. They didn't win a championship, but was also successful at the junior college ranks. So those are the two letters that we have.
I know we ask every year, but do they remind you of any players that either you've had or?
I don't think, not Mike. Jamel, it would be, the closest would be more like a Justin Denton. That would be the closest comparison, about that size. Be about the closest comparison.
So what makes Mike maybe different from another 6'5" player you've had, whether it's like a Brandon Roy or?
He's not as good a player as Brandon Roy, but Brandon played off the ball. He played with the ball. Mike is not a point guard, but he's skilled enough to bring the ball down the floor and make plays. But the Trey Simmons and the Terrence Rosses and Scott Suggs, those type of wings, I think Mike is just probably better at handling the ball. And man, like I said, he's a really good rebounder. Has long arms, great length.
What was kind of the process for Coach Shaw mining him out way down there?
Well, he was given a tip that this is a kid that played kind of our style, kind of like we like to play. And, we looked at a couple others. Then he went down and saw him and thought, a little bit like the Goldilocks deal. One was to this, to that. That one's just right. Sorry to regress.
Coach, some of the criticisms of the team that you had this year was too nice, just full of high character guys, didn't have the nasty, no alpha males. And one of the things when I've talked to some of these guys, the words keep on coming up. You said feisty, chip on their shoulders, hungry. Is that something that you said, that you made a point of emphasis? We need to get some guys that are a little more feisty, alpha male. Was that, or did it just happen?
I wouldn't say we got to get a little more. I just thought this is what we want to get. Good basketball players, that tough kids on the floor. Darren Johnson's a tough kid. Darren Johnson's strong. He's a slasher. He loves contact, initiates contact, doesn't mind mixing it up. We know Nigel Williams-Goss he's a fighter, a winner, same way. These guys are winners and passionate about the game as a group, as a foursome. I think that'd be a way to describe them. But I think they all bring a certain level of toughness that helps.
Also, just with Jamel and Darren, they seem like more scorers. You bring in guys like Bobby and maybe guys that just are jack of all trades, but were you concentrating on getting guys that could score the ball? I mean, you said last time we talked, you were not going to have any problems scoring next year.
Well, we'll score more than we did this year, that's for sure. But you got to understand, a guy like Paris Blackwell, he's like added to this recruiting class, so to speak. He's going to be a new face that gives us low post scoring also.
CJ last year, I think, averaged the most minutes per game of anyone who's played for you since you've been here. He was like 34.8, which was, compared to your past rosters, a really high number for one guy to go all the way up that. So, do you feel like you're finally getting some depth back at
Yes.
wing and guard here? And
Yes.
what can that change for you?
Oh, it changes a lot of things. I think we can run the floor offensively on a more consistent basis. We can pressure the ball. We can get out to deny the wings better than we have in the last couple of years. That depth helps immensely. And, you know, in the teams that we've had in years past, when we've had that depth, we've been able to do a good job on the defensive end and get out and run a lot more and push the ball a lot more. And, I think with the depth that we have now, that's going to help us, take us a long ways in being able to play more up-tempo again.
So at this time, how many players do you have on scholarship?
12.
And in terms of recruiting for 2013, sort of going into this next season, where are you at then?
We could add one more. We could not add one more. I'll wait and see.
Are you hoping to add one more?
What does that mean?
Hoping to. Like, would you like to?
If the player, not to fill the scholarship,
No. Yeah.
we're not going to bring anyone in that's just, okay, we have 13, let's use the 13th. If he's going to help us, then, you know, if that guy's out there, we'll bring him in. But if not, we don't have to bring in a 13th guy.
So then, as this class stands right now, how do you feel about it?
I love our class.
Why?
I think what we mentioned earlier, I think we have some toughness. I think we have versatility. I think we have players that love to play and are going to work, do everything in their power to be the best that they can be. If you don't have those, you know, that foundation, those guys don't improve as much. Guys that really improve are the ones that have a passion to be better. And I think all these guys have that.
Is there a specific position or area that you would try to emphasize for that final signee if you were able to get the kind of player that you want?
Just best player.
So it doesn't, you're not necessarily looking for a big or a small?
Yeah, it probably wouldn't be a small. No, it would not be a small. Yeah.
There's a candidate or two out there.
We'll see.
Did you intentionally look at this class and say, we need more guards? Because obviously you have 4.
Well, you have CJ in limbo. You lose Scott Suggs. You lose Abdul Gaddy. And the year before, you know, you lose Tony Roden and Terrence Ross. Yeah, we need it. We definitely needed guards. Not only to replace what we were losing, but to make sure that me as head coach, we're just going to try our best not to go through what we went through the last 2 years where someone goes down and gets hurt or someone leaves and now you don't have that quality depth or you don't have a whole lot of answers. We just don't want to be in that position again. Our teams that were really successful weren't in that position. We always had the depth and Brandon Roy was our best player. He goes down with an injury. And other than a couple of games, I didn't think we really missed a beat. Other years, someone would get hurt, and we could still make it through.
Of the 4 new guys you're bringing in, who's the most ready to step on the floor tomorrow?
I don't know. You know, that's hard to say. They can all play. We're bringing them in because we think they can all play.
Where does CJ stand in his decision-making process, and how do you expect that to progress as we head toward April 28th?
He has up until April 28th. He is still undecided, and I can promise you it won't go beyond April 28th.
Did he get his evaluation back?
Yeah.
So do you have any inkling of what he's going to do, or what he would prefer, or when this will be over, other than April 28th?
Before April 28th. best answer I can give you.
Lorenzo, how do you advise guys like him? He's not Terrence Ross. He's not projected to go in the top 15. So how do you sort of help him as he decides to make a decision when it could be a decision where you have to decide between taking a second round potential non-guarantee or coming back to school?
Try to provide them with as much information as possible from as many credible, and I emphasize the word credible sources that are out there. The decision makers, not the guy at the barbershop, not those guys. The decision makers who are actually selecting the players. We try to get as much information from those guys and present it to them. And if they are just making there was one guy that was just, when he told me he was going to put his name in the draft, I just said, come on, man, come on. And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, he didn't do it, but if it's that bad, I'll say something. If not, give them the facts. And then I would say close to 100% of the time, guys have made the right decision. It's a tough position that I'm in because players want to talk to people that are going to tell them what they want to hear. Everybody wants to come out. They want to come out after the first game their freshman year if they could. They go out of high school if they could. So as soon as someone tells them, shows them love, as they say, oh, that person, I can come out. 5,000 people say you're not ready, and one says, well, they don't know. Well, I'm one of the 5,000 that they feel coach is only concerned about his own team. So what else is he going to say? Sure, he's going to tell me to stay. So I'm in a tough position there. It's kind of a no-win. So the position that I've kind of taken is, here are the facts. And if you're going to make just a crazy, wild, uneducated decision, and after we present the facts, it's pretty educated, then if you're going to do that, then I'll step up. But if not, what are you thinking? And just kind of guide them through the process, pros and cons. And again, it depends on who's in their circle. You know, there are a couple of guys that told me what they were going to do. There was no advice. This is what I'm doing, coach. You know, so.
So you really don't get into the concept of re-recruiting?
I don't. Probably not. No, I think if you were to look at the guys over the years that came out early, I don't think any of them said, Coach really recruited me and talked me into coming back. I think they would say, you know, you say, what was Coach's involvement? You came back. Well, Coach just pointed out the pros and cons. And it was my decision. I'm pretty sure to a man they would say that.
When those evaluations come back, do they just project where they're going to go, or is there a scouting report in there?
There are no scouting report, although, yeah, no, not really a scouting report. What comes with the feedback of, well, if I do come back, what do I need to do to become a first rounder or a lottery pick or a top 5 pick? That comes from individual calls to GMs, directors of player personnel, scouts. Portsmouth, I try to go every year when our guys are involved. We have seniors, and to support them, but also, I mean, all the NBA people sit right behind the basket, and during halftime, before the game, they just walk right over, and we can talk about all this stuff. You know, what do you think of so-and-so? Well, I think, you don't want to hear this, Coach, but I think he's ready to come out. There are a lot of people that like him. Or, he needs to go back to school. Why? This is why. What does he need to do in order to improve his stock for the next year? Well, these are the following things he needs to do. And you talk to a number of those people, and they're all saying the same thing. the consensus is, and you try to communicate that to your student athlete.
You mentioned
The advisory committee does nothing. There's 20 teams that predict or project where a kid's going to get drafted, and then it could be anywhere from just, they say. I think last year with Terrence Ross, it was anywhere from 12 to 18, I think, something like that. He went 8th, but that was due to how things went in the draft. But that's just what they say. That it's kind of they average it all out. That's what it was.
You said a guy like Isaiah was going to go regardless of what came back? And
Yeah, I think so.
And some guys are going to go dependent on what comes back?
Yes.
What's your feel on CJ? Is it dependent on, is he going to go make a decision regardless, or is it dependent on that report that he got back?
I think CJ's really weighing the feedback. I think he's really weighing with that.
It used to be guys would always say, I'm only going if I'm a lottery pick. And then they start saying, I'm only going if I'm top 20. I'm only going if I'm first round. Now certain guys will just say, hey, if I can get drafted in the second round, I'll go. What do you think of this whole idea, the dangerous game that some guys are playing where they're not going to get guaranteed money, but they're still going to try?
Well, first of all, the reason I reacted to your first comment is because they start out saying, hey, not me, I'm only going if it's top 5. Well, I was thinking about it. If I'm lottery, I'm going. When you go through this process, it becomes intoxicating. When you go through this process and people start to talk to you about this, especially when the guys were able to go do the workouts, you're not going in there half-heartedly. You're going with all barrels loaded. I'm going to show them. And your mindset to make it and do your best has to be one of, I'm envisioning myself there. And after a while of thinking like that, you get to a point of no return, to where you started out only a top 5 pick. Now you're top 20. Well, I think I'm still going to do it. I've seen that happen before. Now, in the second part, Jared, what you were saying, you got to understand it's so close. What they've been wanting all their lives is so close. It's right there. I know I can get this done. And they played against a guy last year that they destroyed, and he was a first-round pick. They're saying, they just don't know my game. I know they're saying I'm supposed to go second round. They just don't know my game. So I know what I did to that guy. There was a player that was in the Conference USA when Dwayne Wade was there. And I remember this particular player out playing Dwayne Wade one game. And I remember Dwayne Wade went that high, and the kid's mother said, you need to come out. Dwayne Wade went there. Remember what you did to him. And they really believe that. So it's a crazy deal. I want to say this about CJ. CJ has an unbelievable support system at home. And whether he goes or stays, whatever he decides to do, that thing has been thought out. And it's been done the right way. And I'll say that the same thing, well, I'll say that about CJ. It's been handled the right way. And they're being very realistic with it. And I have all the confidence in the world, whatever he does, he's going to make the right decision.
Whatever the feedback was, did it fall in line with maybe your opinion on the matter?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do future recruits care more about college wins or how many people you have put in the league?
Depends on who you're talking about. Had one player told me straight up, I don't care how much we win. I'm trying to get to the league. Straight up. I would say a lot of them, they want both. They want to win. If you can do one or the other, I would say the bigger percentage would say, I'd rather get to the league. If I get to the league, I prefer that than than to win. In today's culture.
How did you respond react when that player said, I just want to get to the league?
Outwardly or inwardly? Outwardly, I said, okay. Inwardly, I said, he would be a disaster if he came. He transferred. He came out, went to college and transferred. He didn't come here. He went somewhere else and transferred. Still not in the league, by the way.
And what do you think of the dates as they stand now? The NCAA having a date, the NBA having a date, all this murkiness in between. You as the only conduit for the NBA information, supposedly that's how it's supposed to work, and the whole process.
I don't think it benefits the student athlete. I think it benefits the coaches. The 16th day is kind of, some ways, becoming obsolete. It's more confusing than anything.
So how can it be fixed? Should there be one date between the NCAA and the NBA should have the same date in order to end this instead of drag it on?
It may end up that way. The NBA is not necessarily working with college ranks to make it work.
So the separate dates, how does that affect your recruiting? Because you can't tell someone flat out that last year's star will or will not be here if you're unsure at this point.
I think there are very few cases that you really don't have an idea until the 17th that a guy may go or not. And I think you're recruiting. I mean, one of the reasons, Mike Anderson, we weren't recruiting Mike Anderson early, but we weren't sure what was going to happen with CJ. So I think you try to plan ahead of time in the event that happens. I think if you wait and then all of a sudden the 17th or the 16th, your guy decides to go, let's get the phone, let's try to find somebody. I think it's too late. If you're going to replace a guy that's that good, you're not going to find that guy to replace him. That has to start earlier in that process.
And how much do the new guys care if they care about knowing if that star is going to be there or not be there on that roster, especially at the same position?
How much does
that weigh?
The guys that you sign?
Yeah, the incoming guys.
I think it's all different. Some will say, well, I want to wait and see. In Mike Anderson's case, I like you guys. I want to play.
Lorenzo, you don't take a lot of...
Excuse me. By the way, those 4 guys, they just won't be a part of a team. All of them want to play in the NBA. It's about that team. Yeah.
You're saying you don't take a lot of JUCO guys or potential 4-year guys.
Mm-hmm.
Just what is that process like for you all when you consider whether to take someone who you're not going to have for 4 years? Is there a certain level of talent that they have to have? Do they have to be immediate impact guys? That sort of...
There are a lot of different reasons you do it. Some could come in and they really like your program and they're going to redshirt until the way is paved. A couple guys leave and then they come in the next year. They may have just come off of an injury their sophomore year and think, I got to get a full redshirt year to totally recover. Some others may come because you don't have the depth. You need to add someone for depth. It's so many different scenarios.
Can we talk a little bit more about Nigel Williams-Goss? I think, with the early signing period, it might have been tough to hang on to him the way he blew up towards the end of the year. But did you expect this kind of a year from him?
Nigel's a winner. When you say, did I expect him to go 34-1? And they did win the championship last year. And last summer, I think there were a couple, but almost every event, he was MVP. And it wasn't because he was the most spectacular play out of there. It's because he just willed his team to victory. So nothing surprises me with Nigel. Now, if he did a 360 windmill, that would surprise me. But in terms of heights that he's been able to take his teams to, that doesn't surprise me. He has a enormous, enormous will to win. And that's a gift. A lot of kids don't have that. You know, he's a guy that gets up 5, 6 o'clock in the morning before school and does workouts. And he's 4.0 student, so it's not like he doesn't care about school. So he's special that way. He was not on anybody's radar to be a McDonald's All-American and all that. He just kept busting his tail. And he didn't do it by taking 40 shots a game. I got to get mine to show it. No. He just got lost in the game, and his team just kept winning, where people were finally able to appreciate what he brings to the table. So did that totally surprise me? No.
And the scouting gurus you love so much say he's not athletic enough. What do you say to that?
Neither was Magic. Neither was Mark Jackson. I'm not comparing him to Mark Jackson or Magic. Every guy that was really, really good, and it depends on how you define athletic. I think they're really good at, what was Larry Bird athletic? I think Larry Bird was a great athlete. He couldn't jump high, he couldn't run really fast, but I think he was a real good athlete. But I think Nigel is talk about hand-eye coordination, timing, and all that. I do think he's a good athlete. But he is not the highest jumper or the swiftest runner, but he runs fast enough and he's quick enough to continue to help his team be the best they can be.
How many 4.0 scholarships have you given to 4.0 students?
I don't know if we've had some high GPAs, but I don't think we've ever had a 4.0 guy.
What's his recruiting story? When did you get in on him? When did you learn about him? Were you first in line with him?
I was at a Portland Trailblazer game, and someone told me that the kid behind you is the #1 7th grader in the country. And we happened to be in a suite that night. I said, really? Okay. So I think they had mentioned, you know, if you said hi to him, you know, he would really appreciate that, you know, college coach saying hi. And I remember saying hello, and I remember his mother being there. And I remember Nigel. That was a different name. And I thought, oh, that's pretty good. You know, young man, really good, #1 7th grader. That's pretty good. So I go on about my business. Later, I hear, I think it was a year later, this guy, this same Nigel Williams-Goss. I'm thinking, I know that name somewhere. My assistants were talking, we had an elite camp about him coming to camp. And we didn't have any 8th graders. We weren't going to let him in camp. But we decided, because of his skill set, he probably still could be able to hold his own. So we allowed him to come in camp. So he was here. And that's when we began to develop the relationship. And later on, he transferred the next year to Findlay. We stayed in touch. He committed to UNLV after being down there. And Lon Kruger left, went to Oklahoma. So at that point, Nigel decommitted and let us know he was interested. And thank goodness he's here.
There aren't too many guys who are tagged #1 in the country in middle school who have the humility that he seemingly has. That's a blessing and a curse for a lot of kids. How do you think he's been able to handle it? Obviously, he didn't turn out to be the #1 player in the class, but he's pretty good.
Well, I think, Kim, you said, did you expect him to do what he's doing this year? I understand he was the #1 player then, but then something happened. He goes to Finley, and he's not a starter. He's coming off the bench. Some games he didn't play a whole lot of minutes. And he's playing with Corey Joseph and Avery Bradley and Nick Johnson and all these Tristan, I forget Tristan's last name that went to Texas. Yeah, and he's playing with all these guys, and he is not the guy, so to speak. And those rankings kind of fell because they weren't able to see what he could really do. He was always playing up. He was always playing with more experienced players than he was. There were not only on the opposition, on the other team, but on his own team. So people kind of forgot about him a little bit. So those rankings fell, which in turn I think motivated Nigel, where he plays with a chip on his shoulder. You know, I'll never forget playing against the Fab Five when I was a coach. And Ed O'Bannon was playing for UCLA. And Ed was a sophomore, but had come off of a torn ACL. And, you know, they had Chris Webber and Jalen Rowe, you know, all those guys, and all the hype that comes with it. And Ed O'Bannon didn't say a word. But we played him in the NCAA tournament in the second round. And Ed goes for 19 in the first half. I mean, he was awesome, and he was playing with a vengeance. And, you know, later, you know, he had made the statement kind of like, I kind of drug it out of him. He didn't volunteer it, but all the hype those guys were getting, fellas, don't sleep. That was me, too. I was one of those guys. I was at that level. I was the #1 player in the country when I came out. I'm not intimidated by the Fab Five. And he kind of had a chip on his shoulder, and I think Nigel has a little of that. Don't forget about me now. I could play too. And I think he's shown a lot of that this year.
Is that okay?
I will say this, though. Because of him being a Jordan Brand guy and a McDonald's All-American and Player of the Year candidate and all of that, you know, I caution putting too much expectations on him early. You watch him play, you don't see him dunking over the top of people, you don't see him throwing behind the back no-look passes and all that. Well, he's not that good, you know. I could see people reacting that way. I think you just have to continue to watch him play, see how he affects the game.
Can you update us on Darren Johnson? Talk to Darren a little bit.
Darren is, we really like Darren. Darren is, like I said, physical, athletic, shoots the ball. Darren, boy, he has as much upside as any of the guys we signed. Darren has kind of been a late bloomer. Opposite of Nigel, he didn't get all of the accolades early. Early on, you know, a lot of people didn't know about Darren. Darren didn't really come on the scene until last summer. And he just keeps getting better and better and better. So we're excited to have him. He has a real scorer's mentality. Knows how to put the ball in the basket.
Is that it, Coach?
Anybody else? Okay.